Do any of you know the true story of the origins of the Nanaimo bar? That world-famous treat from our neighbors across the Georgia Strait? Well, the original recipe, and this is a true story, is found in a cookbook of the Women's Association of Brechin United Church in Nanaimo, British Columbia. That's why they are called Nanaimo bars, because of Brechin United Church in Nanaimo. But recently, a historian found the exact same recipe in a Women's Institute cookbook, 10 years older, from down the road in Ladysmith. Turns out the United Church women stole the recipe and claimed it as their own, and we've been calling it the wrong darn thing ever since. They're supposed to be Ladysmith bars. You always have to watch out for those church ladies. Like little Miss McGillicuddy, her church was running on tough times, and they needed $1,000 to fix the organ. So the minister had a creative solution. He decided if someone was willing to donate the money, they could pick the next 3 hymns. And Miss McGillicuddy's hand shot up like a rocket. And the pastor invited her forward and said, "So what 3 hymns would you like?" And she looked out at the congregation and said, "I'll take hymn and hymn and hymn." Which reminds me of another story. A newly ordained minister was sent to the United Church in a small prairie town, and the people loved him. But there was just one problem. The townsfolk took one look at him and thought, he won't do, he's just too skinny. So the church ladies sprung into action, and every Sunday one of them was assigned to bring the new pastor some sweet treats for the week. Cookies and brownies and Nanaimo bars. And sure enough, that new minister's waistline started to expand, much to the delight of the United Church women. And it was all fine and good, but money was a bit tight for the new pastor, and he only had 1 suit. And soon, he wasn't able to really squeeze into it, and he looked visibly uncomfortable while he preached. But the church ladies once again sprung into action, and a group of them got together and made him a new suit, which they gleefully presented to him on his birthday. And the next Sunday, when the pastor got in the pulpit for the announcements, he said, "Good morning, folks. Today I'm going to preach in my birthday suit." And half the ladies fainted. Now, that is not a true story. But the true story is that I told that joke in my congregation in Red Deer, Alberta. And you see, that congregation had a Grandma Link Africa group that raised money for AIDS orphans in Africa, and they had a fabric sale every spring. And 3 of the United Church women in my congregation had the same idea and rushed down after church to the fabric room and pulled out this and made me a suit, which they presented to me on my birthday. Now, I'm not going to preach in my birthday suit, but I may preach in this guy. Let's see if it has sports scenes all over it. Can you see them? Pretty snazzy, huh? Yeah, I'm not going to wear that. But you get the idea. But today is also the first Sunday in a new sermon series that we're calling Real Theology, where for the next few weeks, Kathy and I and a guest preacher will be preaching on movies nominated for the Best Picture of the Academy Awards. And we won't be preaching so much on the movies themselves. You don't need to rush out and watch them. But we'll be preaching on the themes that emerge from them. And every Sunday we'll watch the trailer and then talk about those themes. So not too many spoilers, don't worry. And today's movie is Poor Things. It was, of course, nominated for Best Picture, but it also won the award for Best Actress in a Leading Role, thanks to Emma Stone's stellar performance. It also won Best Production, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hair Design. Now, how many of you have seen Poor Things? Okay, a few of you. I know Bob Peacock has, because he was in the choir last Sunday, and when Kathy announced that I was going to be preaching on Poor Things, he went, "He's going to preach on that?" Because there's a lot of sex in the movie, right, Bob? Don't worry, I closed my eyes during those parts of the film, and I'm sure you did too. Felt like I had my eyes closed for half the movie. I also hear that a few of you went out and decided to watch the film in preparation for today, and I'm sorry for that. My idea was I would watch the movie so you don't have to. But I decided to preach on this film long before I did. I only actually got a chance to watch it this past Thursday. But all jokes aside, it is a beautiful film, visually spectacular, thought-provoking, and yes, deeply spiritual. So no, I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but as you could tell from the trailer of the film, the movie is about a young woman named Bella, who is an experiment, the creation of a mad scientist who has implanted the brain of an unborn baby into the body of a fully grown woman, and absurdity ensues. The film is a bit of a riff on the old Frankenstein tale of Mary Shelley. In fact, it's set in the same era, in the 1880s, the late Victorian era, where a mad scientist brings this woman back to life. And it's meant to be farcical, as you can probably tell, and there's quite a few laugh-out-loud moments in the film, but it's also quite deep, because it uses humor and science fiction and absurdism to speak incredible truth to power. There's touching themes of the injustices in the world. Though the film is set in the 1800s, there's some people who are exorbitantly rich and others who live in abject poverty, right? There's obvious parallels to even today. There's themes on the meaning of life and the pursuit of knowledge and understanding and self-reflection. There's gender injustice themes, a woman's challenge to the objectification she faces, a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. In fact, when Kathy saw the film, she wisely pointed out to me that the title of the film Poor Things, isn't about this poor, unfortunate woman with a child's brain. Rather, the term poor things refers to the men who try to control her. They're the poor things in the story, and there's a whole sermon on that. But this Sunday, being the Sunday after Easter, I want to raise up the absurdity of the film in the way that it treats death. You see, we live in a death-denying society. We don't even like to say the word death. We don't like to say someone has died. We say they've passed away or we've lost them. And Holy Humor Sunday is, after all, supposed to be about laughing at death and remembering that there are much worse things in this world than dying. When it comes to the story of Jesus and his death and resurrection, you've probably heard it said, death has lost its sting, a triumph over death. Maybe that's a bit overstated, because death is still a very real and painful thing. But as people of faith, we hold on to the hope that there's something greater than all of this, right? This absurd life we sometimes lead. That there's a great mystery of life after death. And well, that mystery is like, no one knows exactly. Scripture sometimes gives us some hints, especially Jesus in his words says things like, the kingdom of heaven is like yeast. Or the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. And if you think Jesus didn't have a sense of humor when he was saying those things, I don't know about you, but I hope heaven isn't too yeasty. And while I do like mustard, I'm not sure I want to live in mustard for the rest of my life or in the life after this life. But Jesus also says things like the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, or the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, and when you find it, you want to give up everything and buy that little plot of land so that you can have that buried treasure. But whatever lies beyond this life, that mystery, whatever it is, we hold on to the hope of hopes that it is better than our wildest imaginings. And we are a people of faith not because we're seeking some eternal reward in heaven, admission to this exclusive nightclub by sucking up to the bouncer, but because the way in which we follow Jesus or Buddha or Mohammed in seeking out the divine makes life worth living. That's why we're people of faith. Remember, there are things worse than death, like not living. Now, I'm not saying that the loss of loved ones and grief aren't real. Goodness, are they ever real? And the finitudes of our own life and our own mortality is heartbreaking. What do they say? The only certain things in life are death and taxes. And it's tax season. Don't forget to file by the end of this month, or CRA will be after you. But there are things in life worse than dying, like not living life to the fullest. Or like having the brain of a goat transplanted into your body just so you can keep on living. That's one of the things that happens in the movie, by the way. But chances are there isn't going to be a mad scientist around to bring you back to life. So it's essential that we savor each and every moment of this precious gift called life. And I know it can be hard, but we are called to be resilient. And resiliency, by the way, is a learned trait. And in the movie, again, no spoilers, Bella becomes resilient, and I might add brilliant, because it's a story of redemption and resurrection with a whole lot of dark humor thrown in. And sometimes it's through the dark humor that we learn that trait of resiliency. Sometimes it's in laughing at the absurdity and the difficulty of life that we find new strength and learn to cope with the very real pain of death. Because humor can be a real coping mechanism, but it's also a resiliency building exercise. Now, if you really want to experience dark humor, spend some time at a funeral home or with funeral directors, or in an ICU or in an emergency room, and I've had the joy and pleasure of working in both places. When I lived in Red Deer, I used to do so many funerals that the funeral directors started to invite me out for Chicken Wing Wednesday and a pint of beer with them. And I'll tell you, if you want to hear some crass jokes, have a pint of beer with a funeral director. Or here's a true story. There was a time I was doing a funeral, and we finished the service, and the funeral director and I were in the hearse, headed to the cemetery for the interment, when the funeral director's face went pale, and she leaned over to me and said, "Reverend, do you have your cell phone?" And, we're driving in the hearse, and I said, "Yes, of course." She said, "Will you please dial the funeral home? I just realized I forgot Mrs. McGillicuddy back at the funeral home." Next thing you know, a second hearse was zooming by us, and it managed to reach the cemetery at the same time as we did. You can't help but laugh sometimes in the face of death. But keep laughing, because laughter is sometimes what makes life worth living and builds up that resiliency and helps us to tackle even the most absurd and most difficult aspects of life. The pain is real. The challenges of being human are very real. But with God's help, we can learn to laugh at it, build that resiliency. So don't take yourself too seriously. Take God seriously. Amen.